That's an important point, because if you simply look at the graphics that are on 24-hour television, you'd have the impression that this is a border war. It is not a border war. The tentacles of this are far-reaching in the Middle East. You've got Syria, you've got Iran, the U.S. is now involved. This could become a world international crisis.
One cannot rule out an escalation, unfortunately. We've seen things go very bad in the past. I think the regional implications are very important for Iran, for the United States as an actor in the Middle East. This is not helping our image at all. So I think the United States has to get down to brass tacks and arrange a ceasefire, I think.
Well, we're going to bring somebody into the conversation. I'm not sure if you're wearing an earpiece, Professor Khan, but we'll be talking to someone who's remote. I'll relay to you the information as we have our conversation, because it is not a border fight as you look at it for one local man. He is Lebanese and Israeli. Don Klingerman's family clearly feels the struggle of this Middle East crisis. He joins us tonight in Studio 2. Welcome to Delaware tonight. This is obviously something that you must feel quite personally, you and your family. And you have family over there as well, correct?
Exactly. Thank you for having me. My mom was born in Lebanon, and she was a Jewish family in Lebanon, and they fled from Lebanon to Israel because they couldn't have their religion in Lebanon, and they could have it in Israel. I find it very hard to hear that the stuff that the people are saying around me, that there's a violation of human rights that Israel is having. Just yesterday, 240 rockets landed in Israel, and I think that's a violation of human rights when you have close to 1 million people in shelters and kids canceled their summer camps, and people were killed. Not only Jewish people are killed. As you know, Israel is a democratic country. It's the only democracy in the Middle East, and there's all religions and denominations in Israel. And 2 days ago, 2 young Arab Israeli kids were killed while they were playing soccer. While the response of Israel is very restrained, and when it goes into civilian territories, there are leaflets that throwing from above. They're calling people at home, tell them please go to a secure place, and this is the type of method that Israel works in order to assure that civilians are not going to be hurt.
And obviously, your heritage personifies it, your history. I believe you served in the Israeli military.
Exactly.
Really brings this home for you. I'd like to ask you, for those who are observing this from our country, from a perspective that gives them distance and perhaps a view that I could not have, or anyone here, do you have a question for our professors who are here at our table that you would like to ask them?
Yes. As you know, everybody in Israel, it's mandatory to go to the army. 6 years ago, Israel withdrew from southern Lebanon in order to fulfill the UN resolution 1559, so that the Lebanese army will spread on the border. This has not happened, and Israel a year ago withdrew from Gaza in order to have peace with the Palestinian Authority and with the Lebanese government. My question is, what does Israel needs more to do on thriving and seeking for peace when you have such terrorist organization attacking and calling for the annihilation of Israel?
In the interest of time, let me put this to Professor Khan first and then to Professor Miller, if I could, because we will be out of time in a few moments. Go ahead.
There are 2 things that must happen. There is a continuous occupation of West Bank, and to some extent also an indirect occupation of Gaza. Even though Israel has withdrawn from Gaza, it continues to stifle it and throttle it, literally. There is no food, no water, no electricity and power. And as long as Israel continues to occupy over 3.5 million Palestinians, there is going to be a lot of anger and hatred and resentment of Israel in the region. As far as this particular conflict is concerned, Hezbollah's position is that because Israel continues to hold over 10,000 Palestinians and Lebanese in its prisons, it captured Israeli soldiers in order to have a prisoner exchange. Israel responded by trying to achieve broader security goals in the region, and that is why you're seeing such a major conflict. And I think it is important for us to understand that for the U.S. this is very detrimental, and it's important that we act.
I think I'd make two observations. One is that we need a robust international force at the Lebanese-Israeli border to prevent a recurrence of this type of attack. And the second to the Israeli government is that they cannot succeed in a unilateral diktat of kind of solution to Arab-Israeli conflict. It has to be negotiated. That's the only way that we're going to resolve this conflict. So we need to get back to the peace process, it seems to me.
Exactly. But what I want to, the only point is that Israel is seeking for negotiations all the time. You cannot negotiate with Al-Qaeda. You cannot negotiate with the 10,000 terrorists that held in prison in Israel. You cannot let them go and have them go and do terrorists and kill innocent civilians, kids and children in Israel and around the world.
Don, I need to interrupt you because we are out of time.
No problem.
But in the process, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to both of our professors at the table as we talk about something that is developing with each passing hour, and we need to have a better understanding of it, especially with this weekend's developments. Thanks to each of you.